Hello, and welcome to the Straight to the Source podcast. I'm Tawnya Bahr.
And I'm Lucy Allen, and we're looking forward to taking you straight to the source of the people driving our food and hospitality industry forward.
This time last year, we were down in Victoria at Cobram Estate. We were walking in their olive groves with nutritionalist Dr. Joanna McMillan and Tom Hitchcock, who's the executive chef of the Spirit House. So as it's harvest time, we thought we would go back and revisit this episode. So have a listen. Welcome. Welcome to the studio, Joanna and Tom. It's lovely to have you guys here today.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
Thank you. I think it's fantastic that you're having both the culinary aspect and the nutrition science aspect together at last.
Yes.
Finally.
Yes. We're excited too. Now, extra virgin olive oil. What does extra virgin really mean, Joanna?
Well, think of it as the phrase that I have always absolutely loved is just extra virgin olive oil is the juice of fresh olives. And that really sums it up. It really is, although in modern times, we've got far more efficient ways of getting the oil out of the olives, the actual mechanisms and steps are really very much the same as we've done since ancient times in the Mediterranean region. So the olives are crushed and you squeeze out the oil and you spin them, you get the oil out. That's what it is. It's the juice of fresh olives. So a couple of really important things to recognize are that if you're shopping and you see, even if you see virgin olive oil, not extra virgin, or you just see olive oil, that means it's been refined. So something's had to be done to that oil in order to get any impurities out and to make it fit for human consumption, ultimately. And the other thing to recognize is that if extra virgin olive oil doesn't stay extra virgin forevermore, like any oil actually, but it will go off over time. So after, at least a couple of years, you're not going to get extra virgin anymore. So if you're having really, really old oil, it's not like wine. It doesn't get better with time. It's no longer extra virgin. So the two key messages are to try and buy it fresh, always buy a bottle where you can see the date of harvest and know that you've got it in the right season or the right year, and then use it up fresh yourself, so don't keep it for best in the pantry. It can be used for every culinary use, and I'm sure we're going to get to that with Tom, that's what extra virgin is, and it's going to give you all of the health benefits of all of the wonderful polyphenols I'll talk more about, as well as the specific types of fat. You get the full package that you're not going to get in refined oils.
When you talk about fresh is best with olive oil, does that affect the nutritional side?
Well, it does, because it's I wanted to say it's a living, breathing ingredient, but it almost is. You want it to be fresh because olive oil has, when you squeeze out that wonderful juice that it essentially is, we want to look at, what's the makeup of the fat? So this is, interestingly, the two fruits that give us oil are avocados and olives. And they're both rich in what we call monounsaturated fats. So we don't need to get into I'm not going to take you back to your high school chemistry. But what that basically means is that these are very, very stable fats. And so that's a good thing, both for cooking as well as within our bodies. They're very, very stable. They're not open to oxidation, which is kind of that going rancid process, or think of it as kind of rusting would be a really good analogy. So it's a very, very stable fat to begin with. But the extra special thing about extra virgin olive oil is that it also contains all of these, what we call polyphenols. And these are, the word phytonutrient just means plant nutrients. So these are things that are in plant foods that benefit our bodies in different ways. So, we're going beyond here the vitamins and minerals that we've known about in regular foods. There's hundreds, literally, of these other phytonutrients. And polyphenols are one group of those. Now, in extra virgin olive oil, we've identified, I think we're up to more than 36 now different polyphenols that are there. Plus, we get a little bit of vitamin E and some other squalene and some really other interesting compounds. So that's what's so interesting about it. It's not, we've got a tendency to sort of label foods as being, that's a fat, that's a carb, that's a protein, without actually understanding the total complexity of all sorts of different foods. So nutrition scientists now are talking about food matrices, and it's sort of starting to try to understand all of these different things that we get in foods. So it's really fascinating when you look, you can get right down into the weeds of looking at these compounds individually in science, but then we can really come back up and see how does it affect flavor and taste. And I think that's where we bring in the culinary aspect, because these compounds taste. It's what gives you that peppery taste in the back of your throat. So I'm very interested, yes, in what these things do medicinally, what they do for our health, what they do for our health and well-being and benefits throughout the body, really from your brain to your gut and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fascinating, but it's also got to taste good.
And there's a lot of myths out there about cooking with extra virgin olive oil. Now, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think I'm going to let Tom jump in here a little bit with how he cooks with it, but let's just bust that myth off the ground here.
Yes.
We now have very good science that actually measures what happens to oils when you heat them up to very high temperatures, even higher than you would ever use in a home cooking situation at home, but also over time. So what happens if you're heating for a long period of time, or you're reusing oils, for example, which we might do less at home unless you've got a deep fat fryer, but certainly is done in restaurants. And really, we now understand a lot more about what happens here. And the extraordinary thing about extra virgin olive oil is that it is one of the most stable oils to heat and to cook with. And that's partly because of the monounsaturated fats being so stable, but also because those polyphenols and the vitamin E are actually protecting the oil as it's heated and as it's heated over time. So some of the other oils that we're told are great for cooking with, and the ones that were safest to cook with, like grapeseed oil and rice bran oil and canola oil and so on, actually break down far more quickly and produce potentially toxic compounds more quickly and at lower temperatures than extra virgin olive oil does. And that's a really important point that we need to get across.
And does the freshness do you take freshness into account for that?
Absolutely, yes, because you want those polyphenols to be present. You want the vitamin E to be present. You want the fats to be very stable. So, when I say fresh, you don't need it within a few weeks of it being made from the olives off the tree, but it's certainly, we always try to use our oils within a year of harvest. So you're always in the year of newly harvested oil, but certainly within a couple of years. And when you open the bottle at home, you want to be using it up in about 6 weeks, not keeping it for months on end and, dragging it out just for the Sunday salad. It actually ought to be an ingredient that you're using every single day, and use that bottle up within about 6 weeks.
And that's what's wonderful about understanding the seasons and understanding, when is harvest time in the Southern Hemisphere versus the Northern Hemisphere, and that's a good thing to take note of, because we're on the back of harvest now. So if there's listeners out there that are sourcing olive oil, Australian olive oil, they'll know that, we've just come off of harvest and now it's starting to hit the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got wonderful fresh oils right now.
Yes, yes.
So good right now.
And it's interesting because earlier you talked about the process in harvesting the olives and then the process in pressing them. And the techniques really haven't changed. I mean, olive oil has been around for thousands of years, and the techniques haven't changed that much.
I know, and that's extraordinary when you think about it.
It is.
I know, if you get the opportunity, and I know that you have, Tawnya, Tom, we've had you at the Groves here in
I've been there,
yeah.
Yes.
So when you see that process now, it's truly impressive,
That's incredible.
And it's so efficient, and the pressing mills and so on are huge, and there's all different lines, and it's easy to sort of be bowled away with how extraordinary it is. But when you drill it down to what's each individual step, it is exactly the same as ancient times. It's just been done more efficiently at scale, a lot more automated.
Yeah.
We've got massive big harvesters shaking the trees and getting the olives really quickly into the pressing mill, compared to the old techniques where they'd have to hand shake the tree and literally, and then olives would sit for hours, if not
Before
days.
the next day they go, because they get pressed in another shop normally. So
That's right.
Generally, by the time they harvest the olives, the shop would be shut where they would get them pressed. So they'd be the next day.
That's right. And small producers and this still happens, of course, in the smaller regions, where they all have to club together and go to a central pressing mill. Whereas, here in Australia, we've got this fortunate situation now where, certainly at Cobram Estate, we've got this goal of 4 hours, but certainly within 6, the olives are off the tree and pressed so quickly.
Straight away.
Yeah, and that's what allows such good quality extra virgin olive oil to be produced here in Australia.
Something that absolutely blows my mind, if you look at the industry in the last 20 years, the Australian olive oil industry, and you can see that you do have, so many boutique producers, and then, all the way to large scale. But the techniques are still the same. The seasons are still the same, and they're all dealing with the same ebb and flow of what nature has to to give us. So from a chef's point of view, understanding that story and understanding the value proposition of Australian extra virgin olive oil, what role does that play with you, Tom?
It's actually really important because throughout the season with the polyphenols, like the flavors change throughout your olives. So the stuff I get right now is not going to be the same as I get in 3 months. Even though the olives will, the extra virgin olive oil will last over the whole year, if not 2 years, depending on what variety of olive we're getting. I think it adds like a fruitiness or a nuttiness to it. And there's so many different flavors of extra virgin olive oil that you can go across with and actually bring onto the palate.
So how have you found, do you have a dish that the extra virgin olive oil is like the star ingredient? How do you decide if it's a star ingredient or if it takes a bit of a back seat and is more of a subtle flavor in the background?
I've got two for you. I've got one that all my experiments I've now got one that doesn't work with it.
Okay.
And I've got one that does work with it. So I've got one dish that's actually all about extra virgin olive oil, where it goes from the cake to the creme to the powder on the top, to the tuile, to all the crumb, to even pairing it with the nuts and the pralines. It all goes in together, where it's like a kind of weird combination. And then lastly, but it's like the viscosity too that you also incorporate into that. The extra virgin olive oil sorbet is probably my most favorite part of it. There's not many people that actually do that, and it's really hard to actually get right because it's icy sorbet that you need to refine into a smooth sorbet. So it's really hard to get that. And obviously, being frozen extra virgin olive oil doesn't exactly sound very nice on someone's palate, but when you can get that emulsification right, it's an absolute stunning texture in the mouth to have.
And I'm really intrigued. I want to try that.
It's an incredible dish. But one thing I've learned that doesn't work very well, and this just came from experimenting at home when I was going through all my research, because I had a bottle sitting there. I was like, oh, might as well start here. So we started, and I put the extra virgin oil in first. I was making a stir fry, and I was like, oh, let's just see how this combination works. I used just a general soy sauce to go in it. Then I also put extra virgin olive oil after it came off the heat as well. And I think I put too much in it. And basically, the fruitiness of the extra virgin olive oil I was using kind of overpowered and dominated the soy sauce. So it kind of made this weird mix of like caramelization, yet fruitiness. And I was like, I don't know what I'm tasting right now. But from there, I've actually taken that same dish and refined it down where I've got the perfect amount of extra virgin olive oil, where it didn't just like blow my brain. I'm like, I don't know what I'm eating. So there's things that do and don't work with it. But generally, I'd say cooking with it, I find way more impressive than doing it with just like desserts or just dressing a salad. Something simple like that. Like the general like cooking of extra virgin olive oil, I find is an incredible flavor. I do one technique in the kitchen where I bring my extra virgin olive oil up to 260 degrees. We then let that cool down and the flavor changes completely. And the best way to describe it is brown butter. Like caramelization, like think about, you caramelize the milk solids to get that caramelization flavor. Well, I'm doing the same thing with the polyphenols. I'm taking those polyphenols, caramelizing them down, and then bringing them nuttiness to another level of, depending on obviously what extra virgin olive oil I use. Mm-hmm. And then I use that as my foundation oil to then cook with. And I find it an incredible flavor. And
is that something you have on the menu today?
Yep.
So can we talk a bit about the Spirit House? What is the cuisine at the Spirit House?
The cuisine, it's Southeast Asian fine dining. We used to be labeled Thai, but we've kind of more gone down the Southeast Asian. I like touching all the other regions and finding out what they're about and what their history came from and why do they do what they do, and how did this produce get into that area of cuisine. And now I've learned even more about extra virgin olive oil. Essentially, everyone knows about fish sauce. Everyone's like, fish sauce is, a Southeast Asian ingredient. Everyone uses it over there. It's a staple. But realistically, where did fish sauce come from? It came from the Romans centuries ago. They call it garum, and they bring that to the table. And obviously, that was paired with
I didn't know that
extra virgin olive oil. So I find these links across the board. Where I do my cooking, I'm like, why do I put this with this food? It's kind of like one thing I always use an example as like, why would blueberries ever go with fish? It's kind of like, where's the link there? I don't see a link. I can't find a link. Is it nature? Is it environment? Is it, history? Is it someone else has done in the past and now that, like a beef Wellington? Is it something like that where I can draw inspiration from? But I haven't found that. But with extra virgin olive oil in Southeast Asian food, definitely can draw a line directly between the two culinary worlds, which I like using.
I love that.
I know.
Because I use my extra virgin olive oil. I love that you're talking about the different, I think that's something we could probably talk a little bit more on, is the different profiles of, when you open up my pantry, or actually you don't even have to go in the pantry. I've got them all out in a nice little dish. I just have different flavors. And so I don't really use any other oils. I only use extra virgin olive oil occasionally, a sesame oil or something like that for a specific dish. But I've got different types of flavors. So I might use a very mild flavored extra virgin olive oil for a very delicate kind of dish where I don't want the overpowering taste, and a very robust one for a much heavier, red meat or a really strong fish or a really bitter leaf or so on. And so I think that's what's really interesting, is using those different things. But a lot of people always say to me, it's only about the Mediterranean diet. And I'm forever trying to say, no, why not?
Here's proof in the pudding right here.
I'm grinning from ear to ear, hearing a chef talking about the uses, and to hear that there's a historical link actually is really fascinating.
Joanna, you mentioned flavored oils. Now, Tom, you've done a fair amount of fusion, haven't you? Haven't you been infusing different flavors into the oils?
Yeah.
Can you tell us some of the successes in that?
Yeah. So I've essentially categorized them into 3 kind of flavor profiles. You have the lighter one, you have one that's all round, and then you have like a really strong extra virgin olive oil. So basically the strong ones I generally use for cooking with, because they can handle a lot of the heat, all the polyphenols, and that flavor can carry through. The lighter ones that generally I use for the raw, and then the one in the middle, it's kind of all around. That's like the tester one for me to find out which way I want to go with it. Generally, I use them for infusions, and that's like kaffir lime, leaf, extra virgin olive oil, all those kind of like chili, garlic, ginger, all those like fundamental flavors from Asian cooking I bring into that oil. And then I also bring them into the desserts as well. So that's all the berries. Like obviously, I find that the flavor profile of the classic kind of just like sits really nicely with something acidity. Obviously, that leads into the light stuff as well. So obviously, it doesn't overpower the food that you're working with. But my favorite one that I'd say infusion wise, I actually said the kaffir lime leaf. I don't know. I got this weird thing with kaffir lime leaves. I'm like, little secret spot for. I'm like, every dish I go into, I'm like, kaffir lime leaf. It needs kaffir lime leaf. So I try to use it as much as I can, but it's an absolutely amazing flavor to bring into. It's floral and floral. It works really well.
I'm going to try that.
I think we need to do a road trip, Joanna. I think we need to head north. What do you reckon?
Definitely.
So with labeling, what should we be looking for on Australian extra virgin olive oil labels? Is there some key information there?
Well, the first thing is look for Australian. We're at this side of the world, you're going to get the best, freshest extra virgin olive oils by buying local. So support our local industry, our local farmers. So that's the first thing. Look for the words, extra virgin olive oil, and then turn the bottle over. And I said before, but I'll repeat, to look for the date of harvest. So if you can see the date of harvest, then that's a really good sign. We do have all sorts of certifications and we used to very strongly promote this little, it almost looks like a triangle coat hangers, showing that it's the freshness and it's meeting the particular standards that we set here in Australia, which are very, very high. But I think honestly, the bulk of Australian oils, you see the date of harvest, it says it's extra virgin, you're getting a really good oil.
One thing I want to point out about particularly Australian extra virgin olive oil, I mean, the stuff that you actually grow in Australia obviously gets to us faster. And then obviously the stuff overseas, generally they keep the good stuff within their country and we kind of get left with the leftovers and the older stuff that gets sent over to Australia. And obviously that's been on a boat for probably a month before we get it. Honestly, flavor-wise, from just perspective, let alone nutrition that you get from it, the Australian extra virgin olive oil is probably the best one I would pick from. If you had to look at the shelf and be like, that's one I'd be picking, one from Australia.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people here in Australia, may have Greek or Spanish or Italian backgrounds, and they often say they get oil sent over from someone they know, they're a relative or whatever. And some of those aspects are lovely, but it's really important to point out that what's in the supermarket, when we actually test them, a lot of the oils are failing, even if it says extra virgin olive oil on the front. When it's an imported oil, they're not meeting those really high standards, and it may be that we've got old oil, it may be that it's adulterated, the two most adulterated foods in the world. world are extra virgin olive oil and honey. And the reason for that is quite simply because, one, it's easy to do the wrong thing and not be true to the really good ingredient. But secondly, because these are valuable food products. And so, of course, they're trying to wash them down and make more money. So we have to be really careful with what we're buying. The extraordinary thing is, if you've ever done any sort of extra virgin olive oil tasting, then it's very easy to tell if you've got a bad oil. So I think that's one of the things. I've done hundreds literally now of these tastings. In fact, we hold the Guinness World Record for doing the largest ever online tasting. Yeah, during COVID. My mum and dad, we lost my dad last year, but it always made me laugh when I go back to my mum and dad's house. But they've still got their certificates on the wall because they participated from Scotland.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
But, in my experience in getting people to taste, and what we usually do is give them different varieties so that they can taste the more robust and the mild, and get them really understanding the flavor profiles of extra virgin olive oil. And then we give them a rancid one, which is literally an extra virgin olive oil imported that's off the supermarket shelves here in Australia. And immediately they can smell the difference. They can taste that it's just oily in the mouth. They don't get those peppery kicks from the lovely polyphenol. You can just tell. So, as soon as you've done that and gone through that experience, you'll be in a restaurant and dip your bread. Immediately if it's not
straight away. I've seen that before. And another good indicator is the color of the oil too. I mean, a lot of people talk about it needs to be bright green. Nope. That's a myth right there on its own.
Well, there's a reason when you're tasting oils and you're going through a master class that the glass is blue.
Yeah.
And that is so that you're not swayed by the color. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So these are actual tasting cups. So when the judges are really trying to give their awards for the extra virgin olive oil, they're always in these kind of blue cups so that they can't. You can smell it, you can taste it, but you can't see what the color is.
What's extraordinary when you think about the world stage, Australian extra virgin olive oil has really taken home so many medals on the world stage against many oils from Spain and Italy and what have you. And doesn't that's an indicator that we are doing so many things right and that our oil is standing up against some of the world's best.
It's incredible.
Absolutely. And, look, it's not about in those countries. Of course, they're still producing some extraordinary oils.
Yep.
And producers in this country have learned by looking at what these, more traditional olive growing areas are doing. But the advantage, I guess, is a little bit like the wine industry or any other, where new countries come and looked at something. We've had the opportunity to build from scratch, better ways of growing, even the way the groves are laid out and organized. And, if you go to these Australian, where there's these beautiful lines of olives, and we know where to prune them and how tall to let them grow, which varieties are best for the Australian soil, and then the actual plants and the methods of getting the extra virgin olive oil. Those modern ways of doing have been able to be brought in and utilised. So without doubt, Australia's on the world stage, creating some of the best oils in the world.
And Tom, with your teams, when you come back into your kitchen, I know education plays a big role. And what you were just saying, it all boils down to education, doesn't it? Whether, you're buying for your home or if you're in the industry. So how do you go about sharing that in education that you've received, especially in the last few months, about Australian extra virgin olive oil?
Yeah, honestly, they all looked at me like I was crazy.
Really?
They thought I was absolutely losing it. They're like, what do you mean you're bringing in extra virgin olive oil into the kitchen? We're an Asian kitchen. Like, they don't use it. And then, eventually they came around when I started. I was like, all right, guys, come in here because we need to stop this perspective. We need to open our minds up a bit more. We need to think about this as an ingredient, not as a cultural difference. This is really something that needs to be utilized more in the kitchen because of all the aspects I labeled before. It's like, like the main thing I like about it is the texture. As I find it very similar texture to peanut oil. So when I'm walking with it, it sticks to the rice when I'm making fried rice very well. And that's what I look for when I use when I do any kind of walking work. And everyone knows that walking work is like super high heat. So I'm bringing that, I'm bringing it right up in temp. So, and if it can hold up to that, I mean, I can't imagine what else you do bring it up to. But when the chefs got their head wrapped around it and they like kind of took away that cultural difference of like, you don't cook with that, or it's only for salad, or it's only, it's not for Asian food. Then they'd turn the page and be like, actually, this all works for so many things. What else can we do with it? Now they want to put it in the deep fryer.
Yeah. Well,
which you can do.
You can do.
Yeah. So
You
that's
know what I always remind people about, though, is if you actually go to the Mediterranean region, if you ask a nonna or a yaya, ask what oil would you, they'd look at you like you were mad and go, well, of course you use extra virgin olive oil for cooking. So it has been used for cooking for centuries in those regions. So, why not explore that? And it can be used in any cuisine.
So, from a health point of view, whether it's heated or if it's in the form just straight out of the bottle, does it have the same health properties?
Well, there's actually some really interesting. I always say not only can you cook with extra virgin olive oil, you should.
Right.
Because there's some really fabulous research now looking at what happens to food when it's cooked in extra virgin olive oil. And you get this incredible intermingling. You can get right down into the food science of what's actually going on. But you get some of the, let's call them antioxidants, because that's a familiar term for people. But you get these antioxidants from the food going in, migrating into the oil, and then the ones in the oil going into the food. You even get some new ones created when all of these different compounds are meeting. So you get this extraordinary sort of food that's what cooking is, right? It's really chemical reactions.
It's chemistry on a different level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Depends how you want to look at it.
Yeah, and that's what creates different flavors and so on. But from my perspective, or from the health perspective, the result is that you're getting this greater absorption, lots of the polyphenols, which many of those have antioxidant actions in the body or anti-inflammatory actions in the body. They actually need fat to be absorbed. So it's no secret that they're in a food like extra virgin olive oil. But even the ones that are in a carrot or in any other vegetable, the beta carotene in a carrot is included in this fat-soluble group of phytonutrients, needs fat to be absorbed. So when you get this and you're cooking these things together, you're actually helping to break down the cell walls. You're making these these compounds more available to us so that when you then consume them, they're much more likely to have an effect in your body. So I always say to people, well, actually, it's good to have your extra virgin olive oil as a salad dressing or a marinade or for drizzling over the dish at the end. That's also good. But you also want to be cooking with it in order to get those benefits from the cooked foods and from getting that migration and that greater absorption of all of the compounds present.
100% agree on that, because essentially from my research with extra virgin olive oil, not even like creating new compounds and new nutritions to bring out the fundamental rule with cooking, and you get taught this when you're young, is that the most nutrition in any food is in its raw state. Like cooking it will break down other fibers so that you can absorb different nutritions. So a good balance of cooked and raw, which would be the most healthy, in my opinion.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah. And it does, even putting extra virgin olive oil aside, you're looking, one of the first trials actually that I was involved with when I just finished my Bachelor of Science back in Scotland. So before I'd done my PhD in nutrition science out here. So I was just a new young grad and I worked on, it was a colon cancer trial, and we were looking at broccoli. So one vegetable, and looking at what antioxidants are in there and other phytonutrients are in there and whether they can protect the cells lining your colon from cancerous changes, right? And so what we were doing though was we were looking at raw broccoli, slightly cooked, a little bit more cooked, and then completely sort of almost mushy sort of broccoli.
Mashed potato, yeah.
And then what happened to those compounds present? Where did they end up in the body? And essentially, in a nutshell, what we found was the more you cooked the broccoli, the more you were helping to break down those fibrous cell walls. More of those compounds got up into your bloodstream with potential benefit elsewhere. But the more raw, where plant cells were still intact, there was still quite a structural integrity to the broccoli, more of it got down to the colon, where your gut microbiome then did its work in breaking down the plant cell walls and releasing these compounds further down in the gut. So the take-home message was actually eat raw and eat cooked, because then you're going to get the benefit throughout your body of these compounds. So now, today, I would just throw in, add extra virgin olive oil too, and you'll make sure you absorb them.
Brilliant.
That's it.
I know a lot of folks that actually take a tablespoon of olive oil every single morning.
That's cool.
Some people do that. I don't normally tell people that that's something to do, but I'm certainly not going to disencourage anyone. Generally I say, look, for most people, they're not going to like that and they're going to want to use it in their cooking. But listen, if that's the way you get your 2 to 3 tablespoons a day is what we see clearly from research that you need to gain the benefits. You're not going to get the health benefits of extra virgin olive oil if you use it occasionally. So we know very clearly from research it's 2 to 3 tablespoons a day. So hey, if you take a shot in the morning, then go for it.
Why not? Tom, when you're sourcing your olive oil, like when your wholesaler comes to the restaurant and you're looking at your supplier list, how do you go about deciding which olive oil to buy?
Okay. So buying the olive oil, I have a few things on my criteria list. One, I definitely look for Australian. That's obviously that's going to be like just regardless of price and everything like that, pure flavour. That's the one I want to use. I want to use one from Australia. Then I start looking at the packaging. Packaging, we've got glass, we've got box, we've got little casks as well. And that generally is an indicator. Oh, we have tins as well we can get in the industry. But I generally, the one I lean towards is a cask with a cardboard box around the outside.
Okay.
And that's mainly because of the oxidization of the oil. So as soon as we open that tap, it's now degrading. So we want to use that as fast as possible. So it's either we buy, 30 small glass bottles or we buy one cask that doesn't have any access to oxygen. The next thing we look at, obviously, with the what we're working with is the color, not the color, sorry, the light is the right word.
Yeah.
We don't want to let any light into it. So obviously, being in a cask away from the light is the best place for it to be. So then the light doesn't oxidize the oil. Being in a glass bottle, you want it. If you do get a glass bottle, dark's the best for that. Then obviously we go down the tasting, and then we'll just go through all the different flavors that we can have access to from there. And normally, there's only like a handful of ones in the industry where we're like, well, these are the ones we're going to use.
Right.
So it's not like a huge amount, but definitely we look at the harvest date, making sure that's all coming through as well. And then after that, it's just like, all right, we're going to use this one. And we're going to, not just one, sorry. We're going to use these three, I should say, because we have a quite versatile kind of usage for our oils.
So, Joanna, with storage, does that affect the health and nutrition, whether it's in a glass or in a cask or?
Yeah, well, Tom actually just really nicely summed that up. That's what you want to think about at home as well, is protecting your oil mostly from heat, from air, from oxygen, and from light. So those are the three key things. So you shouldn't be having, I know, if it looks pretty to have your clear bottle next to your stovetop, but that's not a great place to, it's a clear bottle, you're allowing light. If it's too open at the front, because, at the top, then you're letting oxygen in, and then it's right next to your hot stovetop. So you want to keep it in your pantry, and a dark bottle is best with putting the lid on each time, or if you've got one of those spouts that then has a little thing that closes it, and then use your oil up within that 6 weeks. So that's how you're going to make sure that you've got, it's not as if you use oil that's older than 6 weeks, you're going to be, having toxic oil. It just means you're going to start losing some of the health benefits, because you're going to start losing some of those polyphenols. You start losing, the oil itself will start to not taste quite as good. And of course, eventually over time, you're going to have a rancid oil, which I always remind people happens to any oil. So this is not exclusive to extra virgin olive oil. If you've got a refined vegetable oil, that's going to go off too. And you're not having any of those same flavor profiles from those kind of those are ultra processed oils. So they're in the same category of other ultra processed foods, and those kind of refined seed oils. Well, I think there's a lot, I'm going slightly off on a tangent here, but it's worth saying that there's a lot of exaggeration, I think, in the media at the moment around some of these oils that are not grounded in science. But the reality is they are ultra processed oils. They do break down when you heat them. And there is a lot that we don't yet understand about what their impacts are within the body. And they didn't exist more than about 100 years ago. They are new in the human diet. Whereas, an oil like extra virgin olive oil has literally been around for thousands of years.
So that's got to be good for your body. The ingredients there's one ingredient.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's all you want.
And it
the
brings us back.
refinement's minimal. Pardon?
Brings us back to that juice of fresh olives. That's ultimately what it is.
Joanna, what resources are available for chefs listening or watching our podcast, to learn more? I know there's online master classes. There's the Olive Wellness Institute. There's heaps of tips and tricks and great information on that website.
The Olive Wellness Institute is fantastic. I mean, what an incredible resource. I use it, when I've got to give a presentation or I'm doing a talk, or I want to really hone in on the research around extra virgin olive oil and liver health or brain health or cardiovascular. It's a great resource. So you can go to that, and it's open and free, and you can access and find all the research really easily, instead of, for scientists going to PubMed and trying to research and pull out all the studies yourself. So it's a really lovely place to go. And I really encourage chefs, and I'm sure Tom will be on board with this too, for chefs and for just home cooks, And for anyone involved, I mean, I'm loving this whole area of culinary nutrition, which is bringing together cooking, chefing, and nutrition science all together, is a really fun area to get into. And it's about bringing to life in a delicious way these foods like extra virgin olive oil that are so good for us, and understanding that intermingling and how putting foods together on the plate can not only be fabulous from a culinary perspective, but also from a health perspective.
That's a win-win in my book. What do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely.
Anything to add to that, Tom?
Not that much for a minute. I was just too engaged on that. Sorry. Resources from me. Honestly, you should just go out and approach some chefs and find out. I mean, obviously they're hard to come by, but if you do know some other people, it's all about social networking. I said, like, if you have someone that's like, oh, I use this extra virgin olive oil, and just talking to other people, that's how I get all my information. So essentially, the way I found a couple of mine was, through talking to people. I originally worked in a restaurant where they used an extra virgin olive oil, and I thought it was the best thing ever. And I stuck with that for ages and didn't shift my position on it. And then eventually I spoke to other people and they were like, try this one. And then now I've got, like 4 different arsenal of extra virgin olive oils on my plate. Where I'm like, well, I can use this one for this one, this one for this one, this one for that one. And, making a decision like that, for me at my level is actually amazing, because now I can really define what makes a good extra virgin olive oil.
And do your customers want to know the story, like the region and in the story of the producer?
Yeah, even though we disregard it's not a wine because it doesn't age well, people love to hear about, what soil is it on? And they ask the same questions they would about wine. Like, what is the grape? No, what is the olive? Where does it come from? What's the region it's in? And then obviously when they taste it from year to year, the water, it does make a difference on it. And the harvest is different. Every year they'll have a different kind of little twist to it, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's worth pointing out. There are actually different olive varieties that give very different flavor profiles into the resultant oil. I mean, this is a natural ingredient. So if you also embrace, rather than expect every single olive oil to taste the same, actually embrace the fact that they're different, and they might be different based on what the weather's been in the varieties that you use, or the blend of different varieties, in the same way that we get, a Pinot Noir and a Cab Sauv and a Shiraz in your red wines. The same is true of extra virgin olive oil. So it's really fun when you start getting into those different flavors.
Yeah, you can just go through the shops now and just be like, oh, I'm going to try this one for the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going to try that one for the next 3 weeks, and then that one's a really big bottle, so that'll probably take me 4 weeks to go through. And just go through them all and find out which ones you like and what to do with them.
Something that I really love, and was straight to the source for the last 14 years. We've been traveling the country to farms and factories, and we've been to many harvests for olive oil and table olives, and you never stop learning. You never stop learning. So whether you're a chef or under, under the hospitality umbrella, or even a home cook, just educating yourself, whether it is online or actually going out to a farm during harvest.
I was just thinking that, Tawnya. Yeah, if you get the opportunity to visit a grove, then go.
Do it.
Because, I've been involved in this industry since I sort of started as an ambassador for the Australian olive oil industry way over, it's almost 20 years ago now. This is making me very old. But I still go every single year. I always go to harvest at least one day every single year. And I spend time, and I always learn something new every single time. So even though I've been doing this for such a long time. And then, of course, when it comes to those of people who are interested in the nutrition science of extra virgin olive oil, it's literally, I have alerts on so that I'm updated on new science. There's literally new papers all of the time, and new understandings and new things building on our understanding of what this oil is. And it's just extraordinary. Literally there are benefits throughout the body from your gut health. This is one of my big passions, is around what are polyphenols actually doing in the body. And they're involved. They're the first group of compounds outside of fibers that are shown to have prebiotic effects. So they're encouraging the growth of good bacteria, beneficial bacteria in our gut microbiomes. They're, a high intake of polyphenols is associated with better brain health and brain function. How extraordinary is that? And then the one that always blows people away is the extra virgin olive oil. They worry about the calories, right? The kilojoules in an oil. Well, actually, when you have extra virgin olive oil, you're producing particular compounds going to your brain to dampen your appetite, help you feel satisfied and full. So if you have a meal that you've used extra virgin olive oil in it, actually you're not going to get hungry so quickly. You're not going to have your hand in the cookie jar later. So it actually leads to, and we see this in the big long-term studies, better weight control, less, fat around the middle that's the potentially harmful to health kind of fat, that visceral fat, better body composition overall, better, skin benefits and so on. I mean, the list, I could go on and on and on. So keeping abreast of that nutrition research as well, I think is really, really exciting. And there's absolutely no doubt that, in my mind, that this is a fabulous food to be including every day.
It's incredibly exciting, and you are infectious.
Listening to your passion is just just makes me forget my own train of thought. I'm loving just listening to this, all the new kind of it's just, one, it's reassuring the information that I've already received, but it's also adding on top of it as well. The terminology is always so hard to follow for a chef. I mean, in chef terminology, we're oh, it tastes good. But essentially, when I hear you talk about it, I'm just oh, wow, there's actually so much more depth to this ingredient than just looking at the bottle, picking one that looks nice. It's there's so much behind extra virgin olive oil that even if you didn't know about it after listening to this, you probably will. But there's so much things that now I'm oh, why would you use any other extra virgin olive oil? Why would you use any other oil? Why would you use a refined oil? I mean, even the whole weight loss, fat retain, that's all true. That's all 100% true. All the research I've done and all the little bits of information I've picked up along my travels, let alone the cooking side of things, the health benefits of it, they've all led to there's less risk of cancer. All those kind of things. They all prevent problem. It's a very good preventative, and it obviously looks after your body as well. I mean, a lot of the times when I have extra virgin olive oil, I feel good for it. I feel clean. That's essentially the easiest way to describe how I feel when I have it.
Well, that was actually one of my questions. I was going to have you finish the sentence, but I think you just did it. But maybe there's another feeling it makes you feel. A good extra virgin olive oil should make you feel
fabulous.
Yes. And in your case, clean?
Clean and energized is the best way I'd describe it. And honestly, I get a lot of energy from having it. It's not a caffeine, but it's different. It's a different kind of energy that you build up from having this oil. I don't know. Because most people feel when they have extra virgin olive oil, when they have saturated fats, they feel heavy. They feel sluggish. Whereas when I have extra virgin olive oil, I'm I feel clean. I feel uplifted. I feel like I've got a lot of energy today. I can, I feel like running, but I'm not going to run.
Well, it's interesting you're using that word because that's when we taste extra virgin olive oil. That's one of the things that we say is it should feel clean in your mouth. It clears very quickly. It shouldn't just feel oily and fatty as a lot of, a refined oil, which has used, either or a combination of high pressure, high heat, chemicals and filtering and so on in order to make the oil, acceptable or even safe for human consumption. So when you have extra virgin olive oil, it clears from the mouth. It's got flavor rather than just oiliness.
Yes.
And that's what you want to look for.
I'd even recommend everyone going home and actually buying 3 different types of extra virgin oil and tasting it themselves. It's not a hard little experiment to do on how to taste extra virgin olive oil. So that's the first thing I'd be doing after this. Just go out and buy some and find out for yourself.
And farmers markets are a wonderful opportunity to do that as well. I know a lot of the local farmers in New South Wales, they sell their olive oil at the markets. And you can also bring your bottle back and they will refill it for you. So from a sustainability point of view, that's actually something I'd love to discuss. Is extra virgin olive oil a sustainable industry?
It very much is. I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because this is very much in my realm of what I've increasingly become interested in over the last couple of years. I even did a sustainability course with the University of Cambridge. They had a fantastic online course that was talking about sustainability right throughout food systems, from where it's grown and the way that it's grown right through how it's produced and ends up on our plates and in our homes. And so that was a really fascinating education. And I often used extra virgin olive oil as an example in some of the assignments and things I had to do as part of that course. And I sit on the Safety and Sustainability Committee, I should say, at Cobram Estate. And one of the fascinating things about extra virgin olive oil or growing olives and olive groves is to inherently, they are sustainable sustainable. These are not crops that, the olive trees last. I mean, anyone who's been to Greece, you'll have seen trees that are literally centuries old. So in an olive grove, the trees are in the ground for many, 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 many years. Whereas with other crops, things are, they have to be pulled up and the soil is turned and churned every single year.
Yep.
So you're pulling things up, then you're upsetting the soil. You've got the risk of soil erosion, of topsoil loss, and so on. So you've got this inherently fabulous means of drawing carbon down into the earth because you've got olive groves that are lasting for many, many years. And then, of course, here in Australia, most companies now are very much aware of sustainability, looking at recyclability of bottles. How can things be used? How can we best make sure that we're being sustainable in a way that gives us a food that can last for generations yet to come? And so, yes, when we compare extra virgin olive oil to those refined oils, we have a very, very different scenario. So it, as part of a healthy, sustainable diet, is very much one of the core foods.
That's cool. I love the sustainability side of basically anything. Sustainability is like the hot topic in our industry. Yeah. And when someone says to me, is that sustainable? Of course you want to answer it that, yeah, that's sustainable. What we use here is sustainable. Like when you go down to the groves and you check them out, the biggest thing I thought about was like, all right, what do you guys do with the olives after you press them? Mm-hmm. What happens to that? Essentially, they're like, yeah, we have a solution for that. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yep, we don't just throw it in the compost and put it back in the earth or anything like that. We dry it all out and then we send it off to get turned into food, other food, so people can reutilize. It gets sent into nutrition labs where they extract more nutrition out of it. And they put it into tablets. I mean, like, it's crazy the amount of thought and effort they've put into the sustainability side of things of extra virgin olive oil.
Oh, every step, everything that is, from the pomace to the pit that can be ground down. It can be used for biofuel. There's all sorts of different applications for it. So, you can use every single point along the production system so that nothing is wasted.
I wanted to take some home with me and be like, what can I do with this? I couldn't work it out.
You can use the pit in your barbecue. It's brilliant fuel.
I thought I could try and ferment it somehow and extract a different flavor out of it to change the flavor. Because I know it's quite bitter. Once you pull it off the tree, you can't just eat it like a grape. So it's very, it was one of those ones where I'm like, how much salt can I put in this to extract the bitterness? And then what can I do with the juice once I've done it? And not just use it as an extra virgin olive oil. It's cool. Interesting.
Well, there's even extracts, of course, from the olive leaf. I mean, olive leaf extract is it's used in lots of sort of immunity supplements and those kind of things because it has some really fabulous research behind those kind of extracts. So you'll find on the Olive Wellness Institute, actually, there's research not just about extra virgin olive oil, but about table olives and about olive leaf extract that we get from the leaves as well. So yeah, the olive tree is really is pretty incredible.
Tea as well.
Olive leaf tea. Yeah.
Like I said, my next experiment is actually on the leaves. I found a salad where they ferment the leaves with just salt and then they put that on top as a little condiment. I was like, this is going to be... I've tasted the leaves and they're bitter as and they stick. They're like, I don't know, they're sticky in your mouth. So I was trying to work out what's the best way to utilize that on our menu, which would be really cool to see.
Okay, stay tuned.
You can report back, please, Tom. Well, my last question for you is a recipe. Joanna, what's one of your favorite recipes to use Australian extra virgin olive oil with?
Do you know what? I use extra virgin. It's really hard for me to answer that question because I use extra virgin olive oil literally in almost every meal, even in my porridge in the morning. I put some extra virgin olive oil into it, much to my mum's utter confusion. She's a very traditional Scot where porridge is oatmeal, salt, pepper and water. That's it.
Are they steel cut or are they what type of oats?
Here I tend to, sometimes I use steel cut oats when I've got more time and I'll use it in my, in a grain cooker and then it has to cook for about an hour and a half. But yeah, for speed, usually I'll do it with rolled oats. So I'll use extra virgin olive oil in that. But honestly, I find it really hard to answer the question. Both my sons love pasta. So of course I use my extra virgin olive oil with pasta, but I use it and I do a lot of Middle Eastern cooking. So it goes into that. I do a little bit of Asian cooking. So it goes into my Asian cooking. I use it in baking when I do baking and I make, loaves and fruit loaves and muffins and all those kind of dishes. It works really, really well. I use it in marinades. I can't think, particularly cooked meals and of course in salad dressings. So honestly, I can't even pick a single recipe because it goes into almost every meal I do.
Tom?
I actually had some time to brainstorm. Then I was like, oh, one, damn, that's going to be a lot to go through. But I do have one. Oh, is it one? All right. Well, I was going to start talking.
This is
about
our podcast.
Yeah.
You can give more than one. Not a problem.
All right. So I made a green curry with it.
Okay.
And that was like incredible because it actually opened up the pepper flavor more. Because in green curry, my favorite component is generally the pepperiness from the white peppercorns, and the extra virgin olive oil really made that shine. So I was like, this really nice peppery green curry. That was really cool. Another one, I infused it with rose petals and I put that on top of a dessert. That was with a yogurt and milk sorbet, and the rose extra virgin olive oil on that was absolutely stunning. There was the viscosity, not just like the taste of it. You could actually, it would come in layers. So you'd get sorbet, and as the sorbet got rid of, as it left, you would be left with the oil in your mouth, and you'd have all these different kind of like notes going on, and you just like peppery, floral, milky, yogurt. And I just went through this whole journey of just this little step of like mouth. I'm like, what the hell did I just have in my mouth? And I was like, incredible. Broths, I love putting it on top of broths. I love having that little on your lips at the end, like just brushing your lips, and you're like, oh, that's so nice. Extra virgin oil. And that normally I don't put any flavors into the oil when I do that one. Just straight on top. So as you drink your broth, get a little bit of extra virgin olive on your mouth, and then you're just like, wow, that was really cool. Cool little flavor.
What about emulsions? What about a mayonnaise?
Ooh, mayonnaise. Definitely use I use a light extra virgin olive oil on that. And my favorite one actually wasn't an emulsion. It was more of a confit. I can do an emulsion too, but it was a confit. So we confited our egg yolks in the extra virgin olive oil, and it picked up a lot of the flavor of it. So rather than emulsifying the egg yolk with the oil, we cooked the egg in the oil to 63 degrees, so it's still runny. So it soaks up all the flavor, and then you can put that on top of something and you break it and taste like extra virgin olive oil egg.
Mate, I'm doing that. I'm so copying that. I'm going to give that a go. That sounds awesome.
Then it was on a pad see ew, which is a black bean. We did a black bean version of it, so soy sauce, but we made that work. It was incredible. I was like, we made rather than doing like noodles through the pad see ew, we made one big noodle sheet and put it over the top, and then put the egg on top of that. So you'd break the egg and go all over the noodle sheet. That'd be.
Wow. Oh, that sounds good.
Thank you so much, Joanna, so much for being in the studio today. And this has been such a fabulous conversation. And Tom, and we've got culinary nutrition right here.
We do. Yeah. I know, that's been so fun.
So thank you.
No, thank you.
Well, that's a wrap on today's episode. A big thank you to Dr. Joanna McMillan and Chef Tom Hitchcock for sharing their expertise on Australian extra virgin olive oil.
If you loved this conversation, hit follow and share it with someone as obsessed with good food as we are. For links to the Olive Wellness Institute, Dr. Joanna McMillan and Tom Hitchcock, check out the show notes. Thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.